Hello, Salum is here. Welcome back to my Conlang podcast show. For people who still didn't know that, now you can listen to my podcast not only on YouTube, but also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And soon we will reach on Google Podcasts, I think, but it takes time to make it available. So now you can choose your favorite platform that you listen to the podcast more to listen to my podcast show. And for today's topic, we are talking about the IAL. For people who didn't know, that is the abbreviation of International Auxiliary Languages. So first, we must define what is an international auxiliary languages. So according to the definition of Wikipedia, an international auxiliary languages, sometimes abbreviated as IAL or auxiliary, is a language meant for communication between people from different nations who don't share a common first language. An auxiliary language is primarily a foreign language. It just takes words from widely spoken languages. So, as you know, the most famous IAL was definitely Esperanto. As you know that Esperanto might be the first Conlang people learn in all over the world. So what is Esperanto? Esperanto is the world's most widely spoken constructed international language, which was made and created by a Polish doctor and ophthalmologist. What is that word? Ophthalmologist. Ophthalmologist L.L. Zamenhof in 1887. So what is the Esperanto? Let me find some example sentence for you. So it will sound like that. Bona monteno, bona vespero, bona nocton, gis larem vito. So you can hear that is a highly romance language vibe, but it's very curious for people to know why a Polish doctor make this kind of romance languages as his first content. Maybe it's because as you know that the most learned Netherlands of the world is the romance language like Spanish or French. So maybe he just using his experience of learning the Romance languages into his Conlang. And that is why Esperanto is always be criticized of its Eurocentric and a highly inflected grammar, because he is Polish. So, and including very, very complicated inflections of verbs of nouns. So, for example, in verbs, there are like 3 tenses, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 aspects, and the mood. So it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so 12 kind of tenses for a single verb. That's so the grammar is really easy. It's like a relative languages, but and as a learner, you must remember these 12 conjugations. So let me say as a IAL, Esperanto is kind of hard for people to learn if he speaks non-European languages, and also most of the lexicon, most of the vocabulary come from the Indo-European languages. So it might be not very familiar for people who didn't speak Euro languages, or maybe think about Indonesian or Chinese speaking, Chinese and Indonesian. So it might be not familiar for them to learn this kind of language. That's why Esperanto are very critical for the Conlang community so far. So let's think about, is that the IAL possible or not? First, we want to think is that what makes an IAL and IAL. So what kind of assumption we must to clarify, what kind of hypothesis we must to set up in these languages. For me, is the first one is the decentralization. So because your several of these kind of languages is for the people all over the world. So if you learn very highly the words from like English, like in European languages, it might not be very available all over the world, because there are some people speaking Arabic, some people speaking Japanese or Korean, and for them, European language is such a foreign language, and you must learn the foreign language first to learn your IAL. That is very, very weird for a language that must be taught to people all over the world to understand others. So the first thing I think is to decentralize the language's loan words. The most important thing is that we don't need any loan word at all for me as an international auxiliary language. Even as you know that the talkie pronoun, which must be the most successful, maybe IAL of this time. So the talkie pronoun has this problem too, because as you know that though talkie pronoun has much large comprehension from other languages to learn their words, but even that you cannot serve every people over the world from learning different languages, because if you care about like German and you forgot another one, that is very understandable. So you can't care about all the people. So, and it might making confusion, as you know, that if in Tokiponan, the word for man came from like Cantonese, is young. But when a Cantonese speaking Tokiponan, he might think about that most words came from Cantonese, even the word man. So he might overgeneralization to other words in Tokiponan. For example, if he wants to say right, he will say like se or like sa or so. But the words for writing is not actually that word came from Cantonese, but other words came from other languages. That is a problem. People might not notice that when they first learn these languages, and it will making confusion because you use long words. Even the capacity is large. You cannot serve to every language. That's a totally problem. So that's why I think that decentralization is very, very easy if we don't need any long words, or if I have very minimal words, and that is easy for men to set. So, for example, I first time said that writing is ka, and though people must to remember these kinds of categories of vocabulary. So they might to learn ka is for writing. Even he didn't know any reference because there were no reference from that. But that didn't make any confusion. He just know that car is writing, not, oh, car is from like Arabic. So next time I can remember the vocabularies from Arabic, and that might be more difficult for people to learn a language. So that's why I think that decentralization is very important in IAL. So we don't need any long words more. We don't need any reference more. Just make the vocabularies or the words easy to remember, and that will helpful for me and for other people to learn their languages better. Okay, so that's the first need for an IAL to be possible, is that the decentralization. And the second I want to talk is the minimalism. What is that supposed to do? Is that, as you know, let's take an example. Okay, an example. So as you know that in Japanese, we only have 5 vowels, so IAL and kakikuke kosashisuke, so only 5 vowels allowed in their language. So for Japanese, they can understand the vowels are only these 5 options. Also in Arabic, they are like 3 standard vowels. I know that in dialect you can have more vowels, but in standard Arabic there are 3 vowels, IU. So the capacities of Japanese and Arabic people to understand the languages is limited in these 5 vowels or 3 vowel system. That's why, as you know, that the Japanese people will pronounce the English as R, so like writer because Rita, something like that. That's why, because their brain were trained for understanding only these 5 vowels. So if they want to learn a language, they will try their text. They will think that I must understand these words in these 5 of categories of vowels. That's why they can't understand other vowels in such a short time. But yeah, I know that in training, so talk to them like 1,000 times, and they might learn all of that. Other languages from these 5 vowels are very hard for Japanese people to learn. If you want to make an IAL, you must to deal with this kind of problem. Even for the Arabic ones, that's why I said minimalism is very, very important. Even the morphology. So as you know that in Chinese, for example, my mother tongue Mandarin, we don't have any inflections, we don't have any declension, we don't have any conjugations, even the s after the third personal verb. So for me as a Chinese, learning the inflections is very, very hard, and I need very, very hard working on this kind of grammar, this kind of morphology things. That were for me very hard to learn new languages. So that's why if you want to make an IAL, you must to make it very, very easier in morphology. So in minimalism, the most doing well language or conlang for now, as you know, is that the Utopian. So Utopian have only 5 vowels, right? It might be hard for the Arabic people, but it still makes sense because it have at least only 5 vowels. It's least of vowels as they can have, and also it have only like 10 consonants or so. So you want that language be generalized to all over the world, the languages. So you must to take list. So you have 5 vowels, 10 consonants, and as you know that Utopian has a very, very easy way to make a grammatical correct sentence. So the morphology is easy. You just take words together and get a new word, and that is very, very making sense for being an IAL. But it has also other problems in Utopian. As you know that though the morphology is very easy, but it's not very certificate. It's not very well done because you take words by words. That is makes sense, but you can't tell people what is, for example, boundary of the compound words or the separated words. So, for example, dog, go, cat. You don't know is that dog goes cat, or dog goes to cat, or otherwise. So the very disappointment for me to the Utopian is the grammar is too simple. It's too simple, right? It's too simple. So you can tell other people what is the boundary of the words, what is the end of the sentence, what is that a compound word or is a separated word, you can't easily figure out from the text of the Utopian. But otherwise, so I did an IAL before, so I really think I deal with that. It's like you have some morphology words like particles or endings, right? But that didn't make these kind of languages hard for people to remember because it's very logical. And the language name is Lima. If you have any interest, I can make a show cap probably on YouTube channel, and you can see what it will be like. Okay. So that's why I said that minimalism is very important in making an IAL. So the purpose is very easy to think. It's just want everyone can learn these languages easily and talk to other people very fluently, very quickly. But I know that it's not easy to do. So most of the IAL will be done before, like Vlog or Esperanto or Utopian. It has they have still problems much to solve. And if you have any comments about how to make an IAL or what is a very important thing to making IAL, please left a comment on below, or I don't know if that's in Spotify you can also comment or like or so. But I know that if you listen on Apple Podcasts, you can just give me like 1 star to 5 star. 1 star is too low, right? So probably you can 5 stars, okay? Please give me 5 stars if you want to listen more about this content, but I don't know who will do that because I don't think people are really thinking about making podcasts for conlang. Let's see. Yeah, let's see. So if you have any questions or any comments, please left a comment and give a like, give a 5 stars. Please 5 stars is important for me. And if you like this kind of podcast, sure, I do record another one very soon. And also, I must tell you that I am inviting other guests. So as you know, our friends or our friends Raj or our friend Rock or our friends Cantor, and I think they might going to this kind of podcast shows as soon as possible. But I am. You know that I live in Taiwan and it's like lived in America. And, you know the time zone. Time zone is always the demon. It takes many time to make negotiations of the time, working time, such like that. But yeah. Oh, okay. And sorry for that. I must mention again that you can now not only listen these podcast shows on YouTube, but also on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts, and soon we will reach Google Podcasts. Please Google you heard me. Please make it available soon. Please, as soon as possible. Please. So if you want to listen that on your favorite podcast platform, you can just search. The names is just like in YouTube, so it's just Salum the podcast. So search Salum the podcast and you can find my show. And another thing I should mention is that my Patreon is on. So if you want to support this show and well, my goal is just very simple. It's just want to change my microphone and you can get better sound quality. So if you want to support me, just search the Patreon on salum.the.conlang, I think. salum.the.conlang. And there are three kind of tier. One, the first step is Salum, so it's like you will being a villager over Salum Empire, and it takes monthly like €1. €1 is like $1 American dollar or 35 New Taiwan dollar, something like that, or 7 renminbi, maybe. Okay. And the second category is le Vouron. A bad pronunciation. So it's a party of countries Voluni. So in this tier, you paid like €3 monthly, and you can get into our Discord group. But you know that I'm not very familiar with the Discord, and let's see, maybe we can make fun in that. And the third category of tiers is the church. So you might be a god for me in this podcast short and my content channel. So, and you pay like €10, I think, monthly. I know that is very high for such people like me. Paying $10 monthly is a little high, but you know that if you don't like this kind of content show, you can just omit that. What I'm talking about is just a shitty thing or so, and yeah, everything done. Nothing more. So that's it. So that's everything for this episode of my content podcast for Salum podcast. And let's see you next time. Elvis.